We got a lot of sleepyheads today. Where is everybody?
All right, we are getting on to YouTube and
it says we're live on YouTube.
Yep, good to go. All right, good morning.
Good morning.
There we go.
Ooh, you're in the office today.
Yes, sir.
I got to tell you, so I left the house at 6:40 this morning with the dog. Got back at 7:15, did a 30-minute Peloton ride, hopped out of the shower about 9 minutes ago, made a shake, and I'm here. And you can't even tell that my hair is wet. After this class, we will have done more today than most brokers will do all day long.
Well, most people a lot of times. So that's one thing that you hear it all the time about people in like morning routines and getting started. You know, by the time the people who tend to be the more successful ones, not necessarily always, but they typically get more done by 9 a.m. before most people get out of bed. They've already had almost a full day. There's this guy I was listening to the other day. He goes, the 24-hour day is just a made-up concept. Somebody decided that this is what it's going to be, so I decided I'm going to change it. So my days are 6 hours long. I wake up at 4 a.m. and I get all my gym stuff done, but my day starts at 6 a.m. My first day, I do 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. and then 12 to 6 p.m. and 6 p.m. till noon. And I have different things set up for each day. So that way I got a 6-hour day and I go at my 6 hours full force. And then I'm able to get my lunch and I do my second 6 hours and then my third 6 hours and I split 3 days. And by the end of a 30-day window, I've already done 90 days worth of work where most people have only done 30. It's the same kind of concept where they say that, hey, if you cut your employees who do 8 hours a day shifts and you cut it back to like 4 hours a day, they'd still get the same amount of work done and only be doing it in 4 hours. Same kind of concept, just tricking your brain into doing it.
Well, it's funny. I was talking to Jessica Decker the other day, just because I want to reach out and say hi and what are you doing and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And she's working from home all the time and she loves it. She says, please don't make me come back to the office. She says, I was working the other night doing paid at closings at 11 o'clock. Yeah. But I also took 2 hours off in the afternoon and went for a hike in the run, a trail run.
Yeah.
Right. So, it doesn't matter when you get your work done in this world, because we're all making up stories anyway. So just make up a story that makes you feel good.
That's true. Absolutely.
Doesn't everyone get up at 6 a.m.? No, they don't.
Yeah, and if you don't, I'll send one of my kids over. You can borrow them. They'll get you up at 6 a.m. I promise. They're like clockwork.
So all right, Chris, today is Master the Contract Friday. We got a bunch of things we talked about last night we're going to address today. Let's just overall general feeling. Are you seeing a slowdown or are you seeing steadiness?
No, we're seeing pretty steady. So I've got a hot sheet set up for our overall area that covers this office, like Gibson, Tin, Riverview, Wimauma, Ruskin, and its new listings that come on the market in any of those. So I hit that button probably about 10 times a day just to see what's new, to follow along with what's coming up. When I see any of our agents' listings come on the market, I go try to review them just to make sure that everything looks good. And there's still quite a few listings that are coming on. I mean, and when you start looking at the market, and it's been doing this for the last couple of weeks, right? But it's not changing. We're not getting any more inventory that stays on the market. So the listings are still coming, but they're selling. So I'm not seeing any type of slowdowns. We still see the same amount of buyers. We still see about the same amount of listings coming and selling. Not much changing.
I had a very interesting conversation yesterday. I've got that listing that, I've got one listing, right? So if I talk about it, it's the only one I got. But it's going to produce about 40 listings for the company, which is really good. And Jeff's doing the same thing. So, we're out there trying to get inventory too. And we just have different connections than you guys have. So I did a presentation with, so I found a home builder who I really, really, really appreciate. He's a good guy. And, he brought me in one of his financial partners yesterday, and I had to do a Zoom meeting with him and educate them on the market. And the property that I'm looking at, in my opinion, which is just my opinion, Jessica said, happy employees are more productive, best place to work, hands down. Cool. And there's Jessica, an employee, watching training in the morning. Why?
Because there's value.
Because there's value. And she's actually got a real estate license too. And she's doing deals also, which is fine with me.
You take on the perspective of if you're not growing, you're dying. So the more information, the more value that you can take on, try to consume on a daily basis. That's one of the reasons we keep doing the training, to try and always provide a little more value to help you guys continue to grow.
Yeah. And we have different perspectives too than a lot of people
Absolutely.
do. I mean, we're definitely on the higher conscious sides of things.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I've got this CPA investor type, really smart guy on the phone on the Zoom meeting yesterday. And I get into my Google Maps and I do all the stuff that Mike and Jeff showed you to do the other day when you're doing a presentation on Zoom. It's really powerful. So I don't even want to meet these people until I get them on Zoom. I want to see what they look like. I want to hear how they sound like. I want to see if they pay attention. I want to see if they get the concepts that I'm going after. So one of the things I did yesterday is I went to my MLS and I looked up waterfront listings, just vacant land waterfront. And it pulled up 117. It said there's 117 waterfront lots in Hillsborough County, right? Most of them were in Brandon, which is not waterfront, right? So I nailed it down, and there was like literally 15 waterfront lots for sale. And there's
waterfront, water access, be able to access the canals, the bay.
Canal salt, right.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah.
There's almost none.
Yeah.
So I turned my whole presentation. So I've got these sellers that have no idea what the property is worth. And we're getting offers from people that are trying to basically steal it. And I'm not going to let that happen because I am going to represent my sellers. So I've had to create a whole story about what the property is worth, which is a big responsibility.
Yeah.
So I've decided that the land is now worth about $7,000 a foot, which is bullshit made up stories, right? Because the last lot that sold was probably $3,000 a foot. But I'm looking at 2 years from now, and there's no more waterfront left. And this is no backyard neighbors. This is direct access to the bay. I mean, you can't even open a beer by the time you're in the bay. It's that close.
Yeah.
So it's not like 2 beers from the bay. It's like you can't even take a first sip and you're in the bay. So we did that, and these guys bought my story, and which is what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're all doing when we're representing our sellers. So they got my story, and I'm going to be able to get an extra couple $1 million for my owners this way.
Well, before that, so if any of you have ever been on a boat tour with Craig, one of the things that you are able to convey to these people is this confidence and this belief in the product that you sell. And one of the first things that people will tell you, if you're going to sell anything, you have to believe in what you're selling. You have to have full confidence in yourself, but also full belief in what you're selling. It's hard to sell something that you don't believe in, it's a product that you don't think works. But when you go on a boat tour around with Craig, he believes in the product of Apollo Beach. He believes in the value of the homes. He believes they've been undervalued for so long and they've come up. So for him to be able to put this story together, it's because, I live it. This is my truth. I know it. This is what I do. I've done this for this long, for this many years. My family, my history, our building, our land, everything that I've ever represented is that. He believes that. And if you can start to shift that mindset of believe in yourself and your abilities. And if you don't believe in yourself, believe in the company, because that's who backs you. That's your business partner. And we've got your back with all of that. If you can believe in that and start pitching that story of, no, this is the best area to buy in, Tampa Bay area, greater Tampa Bay area, any of that, that's a belief that should resonate through and give you that confidence when you're talking to people.
And when that happens, you're not selling anymore.
Correct.
I'm not selling anything. I'm just telling stories. I really don't give a shit if you buy or not. I'm going to tell you what I believe to be true, and that's my belief, and I get it. Yep. But if you agree with it, then you're going to like it. If you don't, then okay. It's like Chris when we talk about the power plant in Apollo Beach.
Oh yeah.
This is like an old story. Apollo Beach has a power plant, right? And here's my story: if you come back twice, you're over it. That's it. Yes, I can't do any. That's not an objection. That's a condition of a sale.
Yeah, it's like
we have a power plant.
I talked to people who they backed up to train tracks, and the buyer was going to buy this home, and they were concerned with it. I said, well, why don't you do this? Like the agent has said that the seller said this, that they don't even realize it's there anymore. But why don't you go knock on everybody's door who's not trying to sell their home? And they went and knocked on doors and talked to everybody, and they're like, oh yeah, you don't even realize it's there. Our kids love it, or this or that. It's like so it's about that story. It's about what you believe. Like, it's there, and all of a sudden it's not. It's just a part of your life, and then you get over it and you move on. Yeah,
Diane, what power plant? Kimberly says, I was taught a rooftop party the other day. The power plant looked pretty. It is like a cruise ship at night.
At night, it does, yeah.
Oh, the stories we tell each other. Mike says plywood's up 4 times. One contractor told me yesterday he was not taking on any new projects because material costs, sub costs, and getting subs. All right, yeah. Mike, that's an absolute truth. And I spend a lot of time talking to builders these days. And it's very interesting because there's a segment of the population, the high end segment, they don't give a shit. So when you take it, so here's how it works. So a builder will say the wood package, the trusses, all that stuff, the wood package of the house went from 5,000 to 16,000, right? So that's a $11,000 increase in price, which is really a lot of money for a price sensitive buyer. But if you're not a price sensitive buyer, who gives a shit? You're going to get what you want, right? And that's just kind of how it's going. So most of the builders I'm talking to now are just slowing sales. Yeah. I was talking to David Weekly the other day, and they said, I wasn't David Weekly, it was West Bay, Willie Nunn. We were selling 80 or 90 homes a month. We cut it down to 25. So we're only picking the best buyers that are in a position to ride with us. We have addendums in our contract. We have price escalation addendums that if the price goes up, you're going to pay more. And only certain buyers can afford to do that. And it's an unprecedented time.
Yeah.
Unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it.
You have to think of it from a business perspective for the builder. If they're continually putting out product left and right, and next thing you know, the cost of everything goes up, and it's just like we've seen with some other people a little bit more intimately. If the cost goes up and they see they could have sold it for more and actually, profited rather than coming too close to breaking even, they're going to be upset. So they slow that process down. They only release a certain amount of product at a price they know they can build it and make it for, and then they release another set, and then they release another set. And don't get me wrong, the agents that work for them are pissed too, because they were selling 3 times as many homes in a month, and now they're cut back and they're handcuffed and said they can't sell them. And that's a lot of the builders, not all of them. The one that's not really doing any of that, D.R. Horton. So, if you noticed, we're bringing them on more often because they have inventory. They're paying us 3%. They communicate. They send us their information. They work with us. Our agents have excellent experiences with their sales associates in the process. So we bring them on more because they continue to bring more and more value to us and the consumer. So we're propping them up. They're even looking at, instead of using wood for the interior, they're testing out bringing in metal studs rather than wood, to try and help offset the cost to be able to deliver more product at a more economical price. So they're doing everything they can.
Yes, sir. Creativity, and we need inventory. So that's all good.
Yeah.
All right. So we got a couple things, Chris, I had on my list to talk about. One of them was just very interesting. So you can't control what our customers do, but we can influence them. Right. So we have an agent who sold some new homes. Right. And this particular builder sold the new homes at less than they were worth. And so the investors who bought them are going to sell them when they're finished. Right?
Yep.
Pretty simple. So we got actually in trouble, and I'm not going to name any names here, but we had a seller who got greedy. And so he bought a new home. It's finished. He's put it on the market for sale before he closed on it, which is nothing wrong with that as long as it's disclosed properly. And a buyer bought it. And then the lender refused to close it because it was a flip. So, but the buyer didn't figure this out until after his loan approval period was passed. So he lost his financing contingency. So he was really subject to losing his $10,000 deposit. So the seller did not want to release his $10,000, but the seller thought he was being nice and said, I'll give you half of your deposit back because you really did fail to close during the loan approval period. So there's nothing wrong with this entire setup, but it has to be done properly, right? You can't list a house that's not owned. I can't put Chris's house for sale.
Exactly.
Right. Now, if I have a contract on Chris's house, I could sell my interest in the contract if it was assignable, but these new home contracts were not assignable. So what I'd have to do is I'd have to close on Chris's house first and then put it on the market and sell it. But there's a way around that. And I learned this. So I'm going to tell you a long story, very short. We had lost the property in Symphony Isles to foreclosure. And the biggest listing presentation of my life was me. I had to go to the bank that foreclosed on us, and I made a listing presentation, and I got the listing. And I got the listing with a $15,000 a month marketing budget, which is pretty cool. So Little Symphony Realty won the listing of my dad's property that was taken back after a foreclosure that happened because he developed the property, and Hillsborough County said, oh, sorry, we don't have enough water capacity, so we're going to put a moratorium on new construction. So that kind of sucks. You got a bunch of lots, you're paying interest to a bank, and you can't sell anything, so you can't get any money. So the bank was friendly, but they took everything. They took the house, they took the yacht, they took all the land and all that shit. But I won in fight and got the listing, right? And so I ran an ad in the Wall Street Journal for waterfront lots. And a little guy from Egypt, from New Jersey, an Egyptian who lived in New Jersey, called me. And we had a really cool conversation. He flew in a couple days later, and we did a dog and pony show. And his name was Fawad Anis. He's since passed. But Fawad taught us so much. And he was a little Egyptian guy. And what happened was Egyptians were allowed to leave Egypt. Only the professionals were allowed to leave. So doctors, lawyers, engineers, accountants, those type of people all came over, and they had this community. They all lived in New Jersey. So Fawad had all these relatively wealthy Egyptian people that were looking for places to invest. So Fawad came to town, and my dad was instrumental. I mean, dad did it all. I didn't know anything. I was a kid. And we, with Fawad, tied up all this property: Apollo Key Village, Marina Village, Beach Club Estates, a lot of bayfront property, Bimini Bay, you name it. Fawad bought everything, right? And then what he did is we proceeded to go through platting and got plat approval. We got all these vacant lots. And then Fawad would sell these lots to his investor friends from. And what we did, and I found this is how I learned how to do it. It would be Fawad Anis as contract purchaser, seller to whatever the guy's name was, Wafa Assad, and Wafa would be the buyer. So when we went to close, it was the craziest thing because Fawad bought the lots for $39,900, but he sold them to his buddies for $60,000. So we went to closing, and we closed the property from the bank to the buyer. And Fawad got a check and walked out and never closed on anything, right? But we wrote assignable contracts. We knew what we were doing. And he was Fawad Anis as contract purchaser. So it showed that he had a contractual interest in the property, and he basically was flipping it. In his case, it was assignable, so he didn't have to close. He just literally walked away with a check on every closing. And we sold, God, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 lots. He did really well. So when we get back to our story of our agent, we didn't have that language in there. So we listed the house on the MLS as if the buyer was the seller, and he wasn't. So when it was Bank of America, when Bank of America found out that the seller didn't own it, it was a flip. Banks don't like financing flips, right? Because we're not in 2005 anymore. They want to see real value. So a house that just closed at 480 that we're now selling for 700, the bank's like, I'm not sure I want to put 80% down on the 700 when it just literally closed at 480, which is a good thing, right? So anyway, the buyer's pissed because we didn't properly disclose that it was a flip. There's nothing wrong with what we did, but the buyer went.
It just wasn't in writing on the contract. Everybody was fully aware and fully verbally disclosed, but then again, prove it. You know, that's hearsay. Well, we had conversations, we talked about this, but if it's not fully disclosed in writing, that's where we get a little bit of a hang up.
Well, this buyer got pissed and went to the Division of Real Estate. And then the Division of Real Estate calls our agent and says, hey, what's going on here? And the agent wasn't very responsive to the Division of Real Estate. Here's a side note. When you get a call from the Division of Real Estate, answer it. Do not delay, right? We did nothing wrong. So our agent didn't get back to them in time. And then the Division of Real Estate investigator calls me. And when I get a call from the Division of Real Estate, I take it. That's just how it works. I mean, I'm not afraid of anything. I didn't do anything wrong. So we cleared up the whole instance, but I thought it was interesting for us to see, because there's a lot of this going on, guys. This flipping is big.
Yeah, well, what you typically see with flips, like number one, we all are aware of the FHA seasoning rule. Like FHA will not allow a buyer to buy a home within 90 days of a flip. So if 90 days of, depending on the lender, the recording of the deed, or 90 days of the actual sale. Sometimes the recording of the deed is after the sale, and depending on the lender, that's how they're going to look at it. But that 90-day rule for FHA, other banks, if it's been flipped, like even if it's within that 90 days, if it's a conventional loan, a lot of times they're going to require 2 appraisals for that flip. They'll pay for the second appraisal. The buyer pays for one, the lender pays for a second one, just so they can make sure that the value is there. Because if it's over a certain increase from what it was purchased at and what it's selling at now, they'll do 2 appraisals to make sure. Some banks, like Bank of America, some of the larger banks, they may just say no, and that's what this bank said. They said absolutely not. We won't do a flip if it's being sold within 90 days of the recent closing. Not going to happen.
Yeah, if somebody bought a house for 150, and then they want to sell it for 250, the bank's got to question the value. Is this house really worth $100,000 more 3 months later?
How did you get it for that price, and what did you do in between to make sure that it's worth that value? Let me do a couple appraisals to make sure. They even do it whenever they have question about, they'll order a second appraisal when they have question on the value. We had a $1 million, it was $1,050,000 was the contract, $1,050,000. The property appraised for $1,150,000, and the bank didn't like that. They felt it was too high over what the price was. So they, at the last minute, ordered a second appraisal, and the second appraisal came in at like $1,090,000, and they were satisfied with that. They just wanted to make sure. So the banks are just looking out for their best interest. They're giving you a ton of money. They want to make sure that their investment in that asset is worth it.
And that's a really good reason why this is not 2005.
Yeah.
Because 2005, the banks didn't care. It was just give money away. Don't matter the credit. Don't matter the value of the home. Just give it away.
Yeah, I'm gonna need this value to come in. What can you do for me? You think you can get this one done?
Yeah.
the phone call to the appraiser, and that's why
the loan officer calls their pet appraiser and says, "Hey, I need this one to come in at this number." Now the loan officer is not even allowed to talk to the appraiser. So we've done full circle. We've taken those protections away. So I think it's just a good thing.
Even in that instance, if the contract is not assignable, you can write in there as Fawad, in this case, Fawad Anis as contract purchaser is the seller, even if it's not an assignable contract.
Yeah. Because when I sign a contract, it gives the buyer the right to buy and the seller the obligation to sell. That's what a contract does when it's in writing. So I have the right to buy it. So I also have the right to sell it after I buy it. But there's nothing that says I can't market it for sale while I have a contractual right to buy it. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But
I can't sell it until I buy it.
That's what I was in that instance. With an assignable contract, you can assign your rights to somebody. And when you assign those rights to somebody, you, the seller, do not have to close on the property. You assign those rights to somebody else so they could step in as that person, and or you assign your rights as the buyer to someone else so that buyer can step in and purchase it. You don't actually have to close and buy the property if it's assignable. But in this instance, if it's assignable, you can do that. If it's not assignable, you don't have to.
I'm going to whisper in their ears. My brother's doing these contracts, these like to-be-built condos. And a lot of the times we need to get the sales up front so the developer can get the financing. Mm-hmm. So the builder will let us sign assignable contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And we sign an assignable contract, and the building's not even started yet. And the market goes crazy while we're under construction, and the value goes up. So I just bought a condo for $750, and a buyer wants it for $850, and it's assignable. So he's going to write me a check for $100,000 as an assignment fee.
Yep.
And he's going to replace my 20% deposit. So I'm going to get a whole bunch of cash by tying up. I basically tied up a unit. That's why I want Jeff to share with you when we're doing these contracts.
Your mom says, remember, you were on YouTube.
It's okay. It's legal.
Yeah, it's legal. There's nothing wrong with it. We're just letting you as agents know to talk to your consumers, and also yourselves. Consider there's a lot of possibilities out there, and selling a property and making a commission is not the only way. You're never going to earn your way to riches and wealth. You have to invest, and you have to think outside the box, and you have to create other avenues of income.
Yes. And there's and there's risk. I could lose too. You put 20% out on a condo and it doesn't work and it's worth less when it's built because the market crash. You're stuck with 20% down. You either close or lose your money. So it's, there's no guaranteed win. Yeah. Of course, we only talk about the wins. We don't talk about the loses. Mm-hmm. Right. But I can tell you about some losses if you want. What am I? I'm 12 years into a 25-year note on a failure that I did once. So that's good. So I'm going to share my screen, Chris. This is just something I think is going to bring out some interesting conversation. This is a broker who, in my opinion, is scared because I think there's a stupid disclosure. But this is a disclosure that a brokerage company is putting out there on the MLS to tell buyers what's going on in the market. So watch this. Exhibit to buyer broker engagement agreement. Disclosure to buyers purchasing property in a seller's market. This is, okay, let's just read it. Buyer acknowledges that making an aggressive offer to purchase a property involves taking greater risks. These risks include, without limitation, the following. Number one, if buyer purchases a property in as-is condition without having an inspection performed, there's greater risk of the buyer buying a property with defects. True. Does it need to be said? I guess if you're dealing with stupid buyers, it does.
Well, I'm advising every one of our buyers agents, if their buyer wants to waive the inspection, I want to see that in writing from them, just that it's their decision to do it. So this is saying, if this happens, it's a greater risk. I want it actually in writing saying the buyer is agreeing to waive that protection. You have that by them writing 0 days in there and they sign that. But also we have a home inspection disclosure document that says that Mr. Buyer doing a home inspection does this, 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 and this. And knowing all of this, I want to or refuse to have a home inspection. And I think that's a fair thing right now because, if we advise them, these are some of the ways you can win a contract. I think that is a fair disclosure to ask them to sign. Look, I'm telling you that these are things you can do. I don't think you should do them or all of them, but you can. Here's a form stating, if you decide to do that, I just want you to acknowledge that it's your decision to do that.
Yep. Oh, it's definitely safe.
Yeah.
Number two, if a buyer is depositing large amounts of earnest money, this money is at risk if buyer breaches the contract or a dispute arises with the contract. That takes me back to Jim Holloway. At some point, a lot of buyers' agents were encouraging their buyers to check box A, that there is no financing contingency, knowing that they were getting financing.
Yeah.
And then they find out that, they went to Rooms to Go and financed some furniture or bought a new car or something. All of a sudden they got denied and they put $100,000 up on the contract and now they're going to lose their $100,000. That's scary stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm making fun of it because it's silly, but it doesn't go unsaid and buyers don't know. And this is a cover your ass CYA type of thing. Number three, if a buyer contracts to purchase a property without a financing contingency, there is a greater risk of the buyer being in breach if the buyer cannot obtain the financing. That's what I just talked about. Number four, if buyer buys a property sight unseen, buyer may not have a good understanding of the size, nature, and condition of the property or the area around the property. Really? You see my point, right? But
yeah. All right.
Number five, if buyer offers to buy the property for an amount over the list price, the property may not appraise. That needs to be expanded on like 3 more sentences, which means the buyer's going to have to bring more cash to closing. That's all it really means. Or you get another appraiser that has a different opinion of value. But these are all true statements.
Yeah.
Number 6, if buyer deletes an appraisal contingency from the agreement, the buyer may pay in excess of the appraised price for the property and have to pay cash for the difference between the appraised price of the property and the sales price. That really ties in with number 5.
Yeah.
It seems so juvenile to have this discussion, but a buyer is not necessarily that savvy. So to CYA, cover your butt, CYB, it's probably not a bad idea.
Yeah, if the buyer's choosing to do any of those things, even if you just want, even if you just send an email to them and say, please reply to this and say, I understand. If you say, just so you're aware, there is risk in waiving this and waiving that and talking with them about that. We are sending this contract in with that. Please reply to this and just to acknowledge that that we did discuss this. Just do something just for your protection. Have it in text message. Make sure that you have the discussion. It's just a matter of communication. So I'll tell you, almost every single issue that I have to deal with any consumer or an agent, I will tell you about 99 out of 100 times, I find myself always, well, it seems like you don't feel like you were communicated with, or it appears like the communication was the real issue here, because I can definitely find some fault in the communication. I can definitely find some points where you have valid points, but also, vice versa. So it's always about the communication that did not occur. That's almost every single time. So it's really tough to over communicate.
Yeah.
I mean, you really can't. So, I mean, if you feel it's necessary and you want that protection, do it. Make sure that they understand it. Put it out there. It's only going to, like you said, cover your butt.
I think a lot of it boils down to people not accepting personal responsibility for their actions, and they look to blame other people. So when you come across people that don't take personal responsibility for their actions, they're looking to blame somebody else. And when you have a document like that says, look, I communicated with you in writing and told you it's risky to put a big deposit up. It's risky to lie about your financing contingency. It's risky to buy a property sight unseen. I mean, when you buy a property sight unseen, you might not understand what the neighborhood looks like.
Yeah.
Please.
Well, why do we have all these terms, and why is the contract 12 and 13 pages? Why do we have all these disclosures? Why do we have ones like this? Because at some point somebody did something that they felt they needed to cover their ass with.
Yeah. And Mom, you're right. Some agents do not know this.
Yeah.
Remember, guys, there's more real estate agents than there are houses for sale in this country. That's an insane stat to me.
Yeah.
And we're a damn good company, and only a third of you are producing what we're doing. And we're doing 57% more business than we did last year. It's crazy.
Yep.
And some buyers agents aren't smart enough to tell them. They just aren't.
Well,
all right. We had another situation come up the other day, and this is a comedy of errors. So and I don't know all the details of it. I know the result, but we sold a house and the seller owned the lot next door. And we intended to sell the house and the lot next door, but the legal description that copied over, or however it happened, only came across with one property. So we went to closing and we closed on the property. And then months after closing, we realized that we didn't own the lot next door because we never transferred title on the lot next door. So now you got a seller who intended to sell the house and the lot, and a buyer who intended to buy the house and the lot, but a buyer and seller who only bought a house and not the lot. So in this particular case, everybody was honest to their word and they agreed to do it. So the question became, how do we do it now?
Well, you'd have to have some type of legal documentation that agreeing, because you didn't have it in the first place, agreeing to sell it. So create a contract agreeing to sell it. I would probably do a contract to sell for like $1. Well, you could do a quick claim deed if you really wanted to, from one party to another, and pay some of the fees there, make it quick. You can do a legally binding contract with some type of compensation, maybe sell it for $1 or whatever, and write a contract together and get it to title. And hope that the title company would understand and reduce some of the fees as to work with everybody and split some of those costs. That's one way.
What we ended up doing was we wrote an addendum to the closed contract, which the lawyer said we could do. And we had that addendum signed by the seller and the buyer. And then we gave it to the title company, and they're going to run a title search on property number 2 to make sure it's clear. And then they'll just transfer the title based on that addendum that was written after the fact, which I didn't know we could do. I would have said exactly what you said. Quick claim it for a $10 fee. But that's what they told us to do. And they said they'll underwrite it, they'll title insure it, and they'll transfer it. So we did it that way.
I didn't know you could do that. That's pretty
I
cool.
didn't either.
Huh.
But I guess if the parties agree, it's okay. Now, what if the seller became a jerk and said, I tricked you? That's a problem.
Guess what? Some lawyer's going to get paid his fee.
That's right.
Now,
So I thought that was interesting. This is the stuff that goes on, behind the scenes that you guys don't know about, which is why I like doing these classes, because we're making you aware of weird stuff that happens, which is why we're necessary in the transaction.
Yeah.
Right. But now we're not necessary when we make these mistakes. What should have happened is our agent should have double checked the legal description when they wrote the contract in the first place. Our agent should have reviewed the Alta closing statement to make sure that both parcels were there.
Well,
so we made some mistakes along the way.
That's important to note. So, I mean, I know it sounds silly, but we've got to the closing table before, and they've had the wrong address on the Alta statement, and they've intended to sell the wrong property. Luckily, it was just a mistake. Something got crossed over. They did the title search on the right property, but documentation on a different property, and they're able to swap it. And it was a last minute thing, really quick. But it's happened before. We've sold the wrong properties before. It happens. You just have to be diligent with it. But ooh.
Well, think about it. When you're selling. Let's say there's a row of vacant lots in a row. How do you know which lot's really 26 and which one's really 27?
The legal description.
Well, the legal description, but still you got to pace it. Where is it when you're showing it? Which one's 26 and which one's 27?
Surveys.
Survey would be the right thing to do. No, we used to, put little lot stakes on the property, lot 7, lot 8, lot 9, lot 10. But honestly, I bet we made mistakes on that in the past too.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know when you pull MLS up, there's like property lines that show up, but they don't show up on the street when you're out there. You can't see them when you're out there. So the only way to do is to have the survey and then paste it off and actually measure it out and make sure it's right.
Yep. So, hey, Chris, you're going to love this one. So a transaction coordinator sends me a question and says, hey, will you please confirm when the inspection period ends if the effective date of the contract is May 19th? Okay, so let's look at this together. I'll put my calendar up. And don't judge me. I have no appointments today, and I'm very happy about it. Well, I have 3. Okay, so the effective date is the 19th, right here. When is 10 days? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. The 29th is the end of our inspection period, correct?
Yep.
Or not correct?
Technically, no, but 10 days, yes.
So it's 10 days is the 29th. That's not the end of our inspection period, because if a critical date falls on a Saturday, a Sunday, or legal holiday, it rolls till the next business day. So I went quickly, 29th, 30th, Monday. It's Monday the 31st. That's when your inspection period ends. Is that correct?
At 5 p.m.
At 5 p.m. Is that correct?
It would have been if there was not a holiday this Monday.
Oh, so it's a holiday on the 31st because it's Memorial Day, and my holiday calendar is not up. But if I put my holiday calendar up, then I will see that the 31st is Memorial Day, which is a holiday. So now my 10-day inspection period is up on the 1st. So 19, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now I got a 13-day inspection period. And you and I had a conversation about this last night, and you were being devious.
Yeah, I have my moments.
So explain your strategy there.
Well, in a market like this where you're trying to tighten terms up and trying to get things really concise and together, I was talking to an agent on Wednesday, and we were putting an offer together. It was Tuesday or Wednesday. I said, well, let's look at it this way. Put in for a 3 or 4 day inspection period, whatever Saturday is. So if it's Tuesday, you've got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, right? A 4-day inspection period. And as long as you can get an inspector out here in the next 4 days, then you will have Saturday, Sunday, and Monday to think about it, and then Tuesday until 5 p.m. So technically your 4-day inspection period becomes 5 Sunday, 6 Monday, Tuesday at 5 p.m. You end up with an 8-day inspection period basically, or 7-day inspection period basically, by writing in 4 days. And it makes your offer look really good because, wow, they're going to do a 4-day inspection period. that's short. And if the agent isn't paying attention, it just goes really, really quick. And they're like, oh, that's great. Then Saturday comes and it's the end of the inspection period and they have the aha moment. Holy shit. Nope, it goes till Tuesday. Well, screw that one up. And then they'll try and fight it because they made a mistake and say, no, it's today. Your inspection's up today. But it's just a way that you can buy a couple extra days and give yourself a little bit of protection. Same thing with loan approval. If you know that, well, let's put in 25-day loan approval. Well, technically the weekend, you're not really going to get much done anyway, but you will get a little bit of extra time. Buy it till Tuesday at 5 p.m. if you were paying attention 25 days ago to what these dates would have been.
Lauren says, thank you, Chris. I used your deviousness when I'm submitting the offer. It's not deviousness, it's strategy.
Yeah, it puts the buyer in a position, and as long as you get it done, I mean, because everybody say, well, I mean, it's a holiday and a weekend, they're not going to work anyway. Okay, call the inspector while you're writing the offer, schedule the inspection for the next day or the day after, just get it done. And then you have all of that time. If you're being devious and your buyer wants to shop around because you have an as-is contract and you have every right to do that, you just bought yourself the weekend for shopping. Or if they need more time to review everything after you get the inspection back, or you get a septic inspection, well inspection, home inspection, want to review it all and have more time because they're a buyer who wants to take their time, you just bought some more time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that'll help get you a little bit of extra time. Pay attention to those dates and holidays, especially because we do have 4th of July coming up and then Labor Day right after that. So as your contracts come full circle for 30 to 45 day closings, pay attention to your holidays. You might be able to buy a little bit of extra time.
And flip it around too. When you're the listing agent, check those dates to make sure you're not being bamboozled on the other side.
Yep. Look
at your calendar and say, oh, that closing date falls on a Saturday. So it's really not the 29th. In this case, it's really going to be the 2nd or the 1st. So you can take advantage of it as a buyer's agent, or you could be taken advantage of as the seller's agent. So both sides need to understand the difference.
Yep.
I like it.
I had a call last night about a walkthrough. We have a seller and the buyer went to do their walkthrough, and they went to do their walkthrough. It's an as-is contract. The buyer's doing their walkthrough and our listing agent starts getting photos of the property, and the buyer took all of the pictures off the wall, and I guess they're not handy people so much. So they took a little putty spackle knife and they put big 2 to 3 inch by 2 to 3 inch squares of spackle over every single hole. Did not paint them or anything, just left them like that. So now the buyer's doing a walkthrough and walking in and going, I have to paint every single wall in this house. That's what the buyer's feeling when they walk through that. And the seller didn't deliver the property in the as-is condition. The as-is condition would have been pull the nails out, walk out the door, and you're fine. You've done nothing wrong. The property is as is. You pulled your nails out. The holes were there when you looked at the property. You know, as long as you're not leaving major damage marks, the right thing to do is just take a little finger mark, fill the spackle, and put a tiny little touch-up piece over it. But they didn't do that. They had these big squares, and you can see them. There's white spots all over every wall. So we called the seller and let them know, look, you know what you can do? Just get a little tub of water and a sponge. It'll come right off as long as you have glossy paint. Just go over it. The spackle will come off. You can pretty much get rid of almost all of it and it'll be fine, but just get rid of some of it and then touch up the tiny hole and you'll be good. And he was pissed. He had an attitude about it. He was basically being a complete prick and just saying, you know, telling him how this is wrong, this isn't right, blah, 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 blah. So
that's a tough one because I don't think, enter page 14 of the contract next time because they'll put another paragraph in on what you're supposed to do with nail holes.
Yeah.
But, a lot of us just sits back and say, well, this is not right. And this seller wasn't raised that way. So he's not wrong.
Yep.
But in our world, that's not right.
No, that's what I said. What's right and what's wrong by us? What's right and what's wrong by the contract? Well, what's right and what's wrong by us is, buying a brand new home or brand new to you, you want to walk in and be able to move in. I don't want to have to paint every single wall. I don't want to have to do that. What's right by the contract? Well, the contract says you have a maintenance provision, maintain it in the condition it was, except for normal wear and tear. Normal wear and tear is not spreading 3-inch squares all over the house of spackle, just putting them everywhere. Normal wear and tear would be, I had pictures in there. That's normal wear and tear. I pulled the holes out. You guys, you deal with it, put up wherever you want.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. But they didn't do that. So now it's funny because when I bought the first house that I owned in Riverview, the same thing happened to me. We went and walked in for our walkthrough, and there's just squares every single wall, every single part of the house. And the seller was the same way. The seller was a real prick about it. And they ended up giving us a credit for like $2,000 to paint the inside of the house. And that's what we did. We just went and scrubbed off the spackle and wiped it down and touched up.
Pocketed the $2,000.
Yeah, basically pocketed the $2,000, and it worked out. But so that was one thing that I dealt with yesterday. Oh, the other thing, I'm gonna share this and pull it up. I want to see. Oh, make sure. Which one do I want? That one. Okay. In title. So I got this call last night as well. This is they're looking at an as-is contract. And the buyer sent back, or the seller sent back for the title evidence, and he wants box 3 checked under section C, title section C. I want this box checked.
Why?
That's what I said. And so I went through and I said, well, look, let me just think about it. Let me look into it a little bit more. And there's no reason that you can't check this box. It doesn't say it's only for properties in Miami-Dade, Broward Regional, but in that county, that's done specifically for a reason. I couldn't remember what it was. What did you say the reason was? Because of some type of chain of title that had happened?
They don't have records. They had some problem in that market where they just don't have records that go back past time. So they don't do title insurance since the beginning of time. They do an abstract of title for while the seller owned it. And that's what he's saying is, I don't want to provide title insurance. I just want to give you an abstract of title to tell you that I own it, but I'm not going to warrant it and I'm not going to insure it.
And the buyer's got to pay for it.
And that buyer's got to pay for it. And that's really what he's saying is, I don't want to pay for title insurance.
Yeah. And that's what we had talked about. Said just your buyer needs to know that this is what's happening.
And you don't need title insurance. Now, if you have a loan, your bank's going to want title insurance because they want to make sure that, the property they're financing is legally titled to you. But I think it's a pretty good practice. If the bank's going to make sure it's insured as a buyer of cash, you should make sure it's insured too.
Yeah. Do you want to have your quiet enjoyment free of any liens, encumbrances, or anything on this property? The title insurance helps to ensure that. But
it's just become a standard. Well, it's a standard because the lender requires it. But really, how many title insurance claims have we made, Chris? I mean, you've been around for a long time.
I can't recall.
Think of any.
I can't think of any.
We did one. I did one. It was a waterfront lot in Ruskin. What did we do? We sold the lot and we inferred that he owned to the waterfront and could put a dock in. And when it came for him trying to put a dock in, the county wouldn't let him because he didn't have the proper deed. And so he did get the title company involved, and the title company did make a claim. That's the only thing I've ever seen out of thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of transactions. So you don't need title insurance unless you're getting a loan, in which they require it. But yeah. But when somebody comes up with something that's so out of the norm.
Well, he's using a title company that's in Duval. So he's using a title company down that way. Duval, is it, Duval or Doral? Anyway, but anyway, somewhere down south there, he's using a title company down there. So the listing agent is saying, this is what we want checked. And so we just want to make sure, let me look into it, make sure it doesn't say that you have to have a property there, but it's just a different way of conveying title. Your buyer's going to be paying for it. And, so we talked about that, and the buyer's got to be comfortable with it. That's the only thing that needs to happen. We need to explain, advise. It's not our job to tell them, don't do this, don't do that, do this. It's our job to advise them and let them know what the
This is what this means. It means he's not paying for title insurance.
Yeah. And if you do this, these are the possible repercussions. Yeah.
I had one more in my little bag of tricks today.
Did you want to talk about Jessica Decker's appraisal? Do you want to talk about that briefly? So Jessica Decker had a buyer who was buying a property, and they went under contract, and they had an appraisal ordered, and the appraisal came back, and this property that the buyer was buying was not in a 55 and older community.
Oh,
The
God, yeah, I
appraisal
remember
came
this.
back. The appraisal came back and they used all 55 and older communities, 55 and older homes. And they were just, and the value came in significantly lower, something like $30,000 lower. So they're looking at it and they're saying they shouldn't do that. Typically, the appraiser should not use those because they're not always a direct comparison. And so they swapped lenders, went to a different lender, ordered a second appraisal, met the appraiser, told the appraiser what happened on the last appraisal. Please don't use 55 and older homes. This is not a 55 and older home. He went through, did the appraisal report, came back, used all 55 and older homes again. They start looking into it, but luckily the appraisal came in significantly higher, just not at the contract price. They started looking into it, trying to figure out why. And in the appraisal, it stated that it was a 55 and older home. And they go look at the listing. The listing agent had put the property into MLS as a 55 and older, housings for older person. So the appraiser was going off the listing information as a housings for older person and comparing it to people that, or to homes that are for housings for older person, 55 and older, and did not reach back out to the agent after they told him, please do not use those. This is not that. He saw it and still did it anyway. There was no communication, but they found that out. So that's one of the reasons that I have that hot sheet that I look, and I always try and check a lot of the agents' new listings as they come up and do a brief scan of everything. You should, as your listing goes on the market, you should be going and reviewing the entire listing on MLS, and then going to Zillow and looking at it, and then going to realtor.com and looking at it. Those are the big ones. Go look through all those and make sure that the information is true, correct, and that there's nothing that's been missed. Look, we have our staff that's putting it in. They've got human hands. They've got that. They input it with their own human hands. Mistakes happen.
And they try to read your writing.
It doesn't happen a lot, but it happens. So just you should be paying attention to that. This cost that seller about, I think it was about $6,000, and there was also a credit that was given too. So it by the end of the day, it ended up costing the seller about $10,000 to $12,000 because the agent wasn't diligent.
The flip side of that was Jessica had written 4 or 5 other offers for these buyers, and they kept getting beat out. So this agent marketing it as a 55 and older restricted showings from the free market. So these people were shocked they got it. It wasn't a multiple offer situation, and they lucked out. They actually got the house they really wanted, and
no competing offers.
They got lucky.
Yeah, no competing offers, no any happiest buyers ever. That's right, Jess. Yeah, but they won it because of that. So, sometimes, again, that's where we come. We're the calming force in the transaction. So in this case, the buyer was also saying, well, it's still, I don't want to pay that difference because it was still a little short. I don't want to pay that difference. And he said, look, we have to look at it from every angle here. The only reason we had an opportunity at this and didn't have to pay more
because they misrepresented the property
and still got a credit for some other repairs was because they had no other offers, no other interest, and the property was misrepresented. That's the only reason we got it. Be thankful. Let's smile and move to closing and take this one. So that was
Margaret Whitty just typed in that she had a situation where she sold 2 folio numbers on one contract, and she doesn't usually, but she made it a point to check the closing docs on this particular one and saw the closing agent didn't have both folio numbers, and she caught it. They didn't close, and they moved. It took 2 days to fix, but they got it done.
Yeah.
So
what if I hadn't looked at their deed or wherever I noticed it? What if? Yeah, exactly. That's
exactly.
You get paid a lot of money. We get paid a lot of money to do what we do, and so you have a lot of liabilities that we need to make sure that we're covering. So show up, do the job the way that it's meant to be done.
Okay, one more thing I want to talk about on the Master of the Contract Friday is, when you have a multiple offer, the listing agreement's pretty clear. If I bring you an offer that is at price in terms of our listing agreement, I've earned my commission. So what happens when, and you tell a buyer this, right? That's standard practice. What will the seller take? I don't know, but I know he has to take full price. But what happens when you have multiple full price offers? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can't really tell a buyer making full price does not guarantee the seller has to sell you the house. It guarantees the seller has to pay a commission to the listing broker if the listing broker pushes the issue, but it doesn't mean they have to sell the house. All right, that's a big distinction. And so in a multiple offer situation, when it comes above, I mean, if that was not the case, then the seller would owe a commission to every broker who brought a full price offer.
Yeah.
Which is not reasonable or rational. All right. So it's very sad, but a buyer who in good faith makes a full price offer and expects to win the house, don't let them think they're going to win the house because they wrote a full price offer. Right. Now, if the seller only got one offer and it was full price and he refused to sign it, then the listing broker could go to the seller and say, hey, seller, you owe a commission because we fulfill the terms of our listing agreement. But if the listing broker doesn't choose to do that, the buyer's agent has no recourse whatsoever. And that was a question Randy asked in my email earlier this week, right? So I just want to make sure we're clear on that. A full price offer does not mean the buyer gets the house. It means a commission is earned if the listing broker makes it a point to go after it.
Yeah, no,
But if we have multiple full price offers and some that are over full price, the seller can choose whatever the hell they want.
yeah, we talked with Jim Holloway about this a couple months ago regarding an issue like that, and just asked him that question. You know, say the seller signed a contract stating that they would sell the home if you brought that. I said, no, the seller signed a contract agreeing to pay a commission if you brought them a buyer at that price, not to sell the home. It's not a guaranteed I will sell my home. It's market my home and I'm willing to compensate you for bringing me an offer like that. And usually the compensation comes in form of selling my property and paying the commission that way. But we went round and round about that. Well, his stance was just that you're gonna be hard pressed to get any judge or anybody to force a seller to sell their home just because you wrote a full price offer. It's not going to happen. He goes, but if you wanted to go after your commission, that's something that the listing agent has to do, not the buyer. The buyer's agent in buyer's brokerage doesn't have any grounds to stand on. And that's contrary to what we had thought. We had thought that if we make a claim to the listing broker for the commission because we fulfilled that, he would have to go after the seller. And he was saying to know that the listing broker has to be willing to do that. It really doesn't have any bearing on you going after them, right?
Well, I think we could go after them.
Like we would have to make a claim against the listing agent or listing brokerage and say, we believe we fulfilled the terms of your listing agreement and we should be due a commission. And then they would have to agree or disagree to go after the seller, correct?
Right. Yep. That's it. So Chris, what is happening in the Apollo Beach office today?
Today, to kick off Memorial Day, we're having a little potluck from 11 to 2. So if you're in the area and want to come by, please do. Bring a drink or bring a dish. We're doing a international or culture day, something that you grew up with. Bring something that's reminiscent of your culture for a drink or food. That's what we'll be doing this afternoon. If anybody would like to come by and enjoy some lunch in good company, we'll have drinks and food.
Very cool.
Other than that,
All right.
You guys have Memorial Day weekend. You guys have a safe, happy weekend. It's a busy day on the water and on the beaches, so please be safe.
Yes, absolutely. Be safe. Enjoy the weather. It's going to be a beautiful weekend. And this is the official kickoff of summer. So I guess Monday, we're not going to be doing Marketing Monday. So we'll see you at sales meeting on Tuesday. So be safe, stay happy, and happy Memorial Day.
Yeah, you guys have a great weekend.
All right. Oh, and it's end of month, right? So the last day of the month is May 3rd. I can go look at pending contracts right now and see how many closes we have due on Monday that aren't going to close.
Also, Florida 21, today's the last day to RSVP. Get an email to Susie, reply to her if you're going to go to Naples for Florida 21 in July. So make sure you reply to her.
Perfect.
Cool.
All right.